The grand ballroom of the Drake Tower was alive with energy on the evening of Alexander Drake's 40th birthday. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, casting shimmering reflections on polished marble floors. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully through the crowd, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres to elegantly dressed guests who laughed and mingled beneath the glittering lights. The air buzzed with excitement as New York City's elite celebrated one of the most influential men in the world. A self-made billionaire known for his sharp mind, relentless ambition, and enigmatic charm. Alexander Drake stood near the center of the room, a glass of scotch in hand, surveying the scene with an unreadable expression. At 40, he had achieved more than most people could dream of. A sprawling business empire, properties scattered across the globe, and a reputation that commanded respect, and sometimes fear. Yet despite the outward appearance of success, Alex felt a strange emptiness gnawing at him. His life was a carefully constructed machine, precise and efficient, but devoid of warmth. He rarely allowed himself to think about the sacrifices it took to build his empire, sacrifices that included relationships, friendships, and even love. Tonight, however, something felt different. Earlier in the day, his assistant had mentioned, cryptically, that an unexpected guest might arrive. When Alex pressed for details, she only smiled nervously and said, "You'll see." The comment lingered in his mind like a splinter, irritating him just enough to disrupt his usual composure. Who could this mystery person be? An old business rival? A forgotten acquaintance? Or perhaps someone from his past he'd rather not remember? As the clock struck 8, the elevator doors at the far end of the ballroom slid open with a soft ding. All conversation seemed to pause as everyone turned to see who had arrived. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Standing there was Sophia Bennett, a woman Alex hadn't seen or heard from in over 15 years. Her presence was both familiar and jarring, like stumbling upon an old photograph you thought you'd lost forever. She looked older now, her youthful glow replaced by a quiet strength, but her beauty remained undiminished. What caught Alex's attention immediately, though, were the two small boys standing beside her, their tiny hands clutching hers tightly. The resemblance was unmistakable. Both boys shared Alex's piercing blue eyes and confident posture, though they favored Sophia's warm smile. They wore matching navy blazers and khaki pants, looking every bit like miniature versions of their father. As Sophia stepped forward, her gaze locked onto Alex's, and the tension in the room became almost palpable. Guests exchanged curious glances, whispering behind raised hands. No one knew what to make of this sudden intrusion, or whether it was planned. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he set down his glass and walked toward her. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by questions he wasn't ready to ask. When he finally reached her, he stopped short, his voice barely above a murmur. "Sophia," he said, his tone laced with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Sophia took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. "Happy birthday, Alex," she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly. Then, gesturing to the boys beside her, she added, "There's something I need to tell you." For a split second, Alex considered demanding answers right then and there, surrounded by prying eyes and buzzing gossip. But something in Sophia's expression, a mix of vulnerability and resolve, stopped him. Instead, he nodded curtly and gestured for her to follow him. Ignoring the murmurs of the crowd, he led Sophia and the boys into a private study adjacent to the ballroom, shutting the heavy wooden door firmly behind them. Inside, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The noise of the party faded into muffled echoes, leaving only the weight of unspoken truths hanging in the air. Alex turned to face Sophia, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his voice low but tinged with anger. "Who are these boys? And why are you here after all these years?" Sophia hesitated, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. She glanced down at the twins, who stared up at her with wide, innocent eyes, sensing the gravity of the moment. Taking another steadying breath, she began to speak. "Alex, these are your sons, Jacob and Ethan. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of him. He staggered back a step, his mind struggling to process what he'd just heard. "They're mine?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. Sophia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I found out I was pregnant shortly before we broke up in college. I didn't know how to tell you. You were so focused on your dreams and I didn't want to hold you back. So I left without saying goodbye." Alex's head spun as memories flooded back. Late-night conversations about the future, promises made under starlit skies, and the crushing pain of finding out Sophia had vanished without explanation. He remembered how he'd searched for her, calling friends and family, desperate for answers. But eventually he'd convinced himself that moving on was the only option. Now, standing before him, were living proof of the life they could have, had together. If only he'd known. But why wait until now? Alex asked, his voice rising with frustration. Why keep this from me for 15 years? Sophia's tears spilled over, streaming down her cheeks. Because I was scared, she admitted. Scared of ruining your life. Scared of being overshadowed by your success. And honestly, scared of needing you too much. Raising them alone hasn't been easy, Alex. I worked multiple jobs, sacrificed everything to give them a good life, but recently... Her voice cracked, and she paused to compose herself. Recently, my health started failing. I realized I couldn't do this anymore, not without telling you the truth. You deserve to know your sons, and they deserve to know their father. The weight of her confession settled heavily in the room. Alex looked at Jacob and Ethan, really looked at them, for the first time. They were watching him intently, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Despite his shock and anger, he couldn't deny the connection he felt. There was no mistaking the familial bond. It was written in their features, in the way they carried themselves, in the way they mirrored his own mannerisms. Slowly, Alex crouched down to their level, forcing himself to soften his tone. "Hi, guys," he said, managing a small smile. I'm your dad." The words felt surreal rolling off his tongue, but seeing the tentative smiles that spread across their faces made his heart ache in ways he hadn't experienced in years. Over the next hour, Alex listened as Sophia shared snippets of their lives, schools they attended, their favorite hobbies, the challenges they'd faced growing up without a father. Each story painted a picture of two remarkable boys who had thrived despite the odds stacked against them. By the time they emerged from the study, Alex's world had been irrevocably changed. The man who once prided himself on control and precision now found himself grappling with emotions he couldn't fully comprehend. As the night wore on, Alex excused himself from the party, retreating to the solitude of his penthouse balcony. Below him, the city lights twinkled like stars, but his thoughts were consumed by the events of the evening. How had he missed this? How had he gone 15 years without knowing he had children? More importantly, what was he supposed to do now? The questions swirled endlessly in his mind, leaving him restless and uncertain. One thing was clear, though. His life would never be the same again. The morning after Alexander Drake's birthday party dawned crisp and clear, the kind of day that seemed tailor-made for new beginnings. But for Alex, there was no clarity. Only a storm of emotions swirling inside him like turbulent waves crashing against a rocky shore. He sat alone in his penthouse office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline without really seeing it. The weight of Sophia's revelation pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. 2 sons. 15 years of missed birthdays, scraped knees, school plays and bedtime stories, all because he hadn't known they existed. His mind kept replaying their faces, Jacob's cautious curiosity and Ethan's shy smile. They were strangers, yet they weren't, not entirely. There was something inherently familiar about them, as if pieces of himself had been scattered across their personalities. It was unsettling, but also strangely comforting. For so long, Alex had defined himself by his achievements, his wealth, his power. But now, standing in the shadow of this monumental truth, those things felt hollow. What use was a fortune if it came at the cost of relationships, of family? Still, anger simmered beneath the surface. How could Sophia keep such a secret from him? Didn't she trust him enough to share something so life-altering? He understood her fears, or at least he tried to. But understanding didn't erase the hurt. Every unanswered question gnawed at him, demanding resolution. And then there were the practicalities. What would happen next? Did Sophia expect him to step into the role of father overnight? Could he even do that after being absent for so long? By mid-morning, Alex realized he couldn't face this alone. He summoned his personal assistant, Clara, and instructed her to gather his legal team and PR advisors immediately. News of Sophia's arrival, and the twin boys, had already leaked to the media, thanks to the ever-watchful eyes of tabloid photographers stationed outside the Drake Tower. Headlines screamed, variations of Billionaire's shock birthday bombshell, and secret twins rock Drake empire. The public frenzy was building, and Alex knew damage control was essential. But more than that, he needed guidance. This wasn't just a business crisis, it was deeply personal. When his team arrived, Alex wasted no time getting down to business. "We need a plan," he said firmly, pacing the length of the conference room. "The press is going to eat this up, and I can't let it spiral out of control. More importantly, I need to figure out how to handle everything else." His voice faltered slightly on the last part, betraying the vulnerability he usually kept hidden behind a mask of confidence. Clara nodded sympathetically. She'd worked for Alex for nearly a decade and had never seen him this rattled. "I'll draft a statement addressing the situation," she offered. "Something neutral but sincere. We'll emphasize your commitment to doing what's best for the children while protecting their privacy." Alex agreed, though his thoughts were already drifting elsewhere. Damage control was necessary, yes, but it wasn't the priority weighing on his heart. What mattered most right now was figuring out how to build a relationship with Jacob and Ethan. These weren't just names in a headline. They were his flesh and blood. And despite the shock and confusion, Alex couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward them. He owed it to them, and to himself, to try. That afternoon, Alex made a decision. He called Sophia and asked if he could spend time with the boys. To his relief, she agreed, though her tone was guarded. "Take it slow," she cautioned. "They're adjusting too, you know. This isn't easy for any of us." "I understand," Alex replied, his voice softer than usual. I want to get to know them. If that's okay." Sophia hesitated before responding. "It's more than okay, Alex. It's overdue." The following weekend, Alex invited Jacob and Ethan to visit his penthouse. He wanted their first outing together to feel special but not overwhelming, so he planned a simple day filled with activities he hoped they'd enjoy. When they arrived, accompanied by Sophia, Alex greeted them warmly, trying to mask his nerves. The boys looked around the luxurious space with wide-eyed wonder, their excitement evident despite their shyness. "Welcome to my home," Alex said, kneeling down to their level. "I thought we could start with some games. Maybe watch a movie. Later. Does that sound fun?" Jacob nodded eagerly while Ethan clung to Sophia's hand, his expression uncertain. Seeing this, Alex felt a pang of guilt. He wished he could turn back time, erase the years he'd missed and start fresh. But he knew that wasn't possible. All he could do was move forward, one small step at a time. Over the course of the day, Alex did his best to connect with the boys. They played board games, built towers with blocks, and even attempted a puzzle together. At one point, Jacob shyly asked, "Do you like robots?" When Alex admitted he did, the boy's face lit up. "Me too. Mom says I'm going to be an inventor when I grow up." Alex smiled, genuinely impressed. "Well, inventors are pretty cool. Maybe someday you'll design something amazing." Encouraged by the compliment, Jacob launched into a detailed explanation of a robot he'd dreamed up, a machine that could clean rooms automatically. Listening to him talk, Alex saw glimpses of his own childhood fascination with technology. It was uncanny how much alike they were. Ethan, however, remained quieter, observing everything with a thoughtful gaze. During a break in the activities, Alex noticed him flipping through a book of famous landmarks. Sensing an opportunity, Alex joined him on the couch. "Do you like traveling?" he asked gently. Ethan shrugged. "I've never been anywhere big. Just Grandma's house in Ohio." "Well," Alex said, leaning closer, "how about we fix that? Someday I'd love to take you to see places like the Eiffel Tower or the pyramids. Would you like that?" For the first time that day, Ethan smiled, a tentative but genuine grin that made Alex's chest swell with pride. Progress, no matter how small, felt like a victory. As the hours passed, Alex found himself relaxing in their company. Despite the awkwardness and uncertainty, there were moments of pure joy. Laughter shared over silly jokes, the thrill of winning a game, the quiet satisfaction of seeing them open up to him. By the end of the visit, both boys seemed more comfortable, even hugging him goodbye before leaving with Sophia. Watching them go, Alex felt a bittersweet mix of happiness and longing. He wanted to hold on to these moments forever, to bottle the feeling of belonging that had eluded him for so long, but alongside the warmth came lingering doubts. Was he doing enough? Could he truly be the father they needed after all this time? And what about Sophia? Their interactions had been polite but strained, a reminder of the unresolved issues between them. As much as Alex cared for the boys, he couldn't ignore the fact that Sophia was still a central part of their lives and therefore, inevitably, part of his. Later that evening, Alex poured himself a glass of wine and settled onto the balcony, reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions he'd experienced in just a few days. Building a relationship with Jacob and Ethan wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to try. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to rewrite his story. Over the next few weeks, Alexander Drake's life underwent a transformation, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The billionaire who once prided himself on control and precision found himself navigating uncharted waters filled with uncertainty, emotion, and the overwhelming responsibility of fatherhood. Each day brought new challenges, but also moments of unexpected joy that slowly began to reshape his perspective on what truly mattered. Alex made it a point to see Jacob and Ethan regularly, carving out time in his otherwise packed schedule to be present in their lives. At first, these visits were awkward. The boys were still adjusting to the idea of having a father they barely knew, and Alex struggled to find ways to connect without overwhelming them. But as the days turned into weeks, a rhythm began to emerge. They spent Saturdays together, exploring museums, attending sports events, or simply hanging out at Alex's penthouse. On weekdays, Alex would call them during dinner, asking about their school day or sharing stories from his own childhood. These small gestures helped bridge the gap between them, fostering a bond that grew stronger with each passing week. One Saturday morning, Alex decided to take the boys to a robotics workshop hosted by one of his tech companies. He had heard Jacob mention his interest in inventing robots, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity to nurture that passion. When they arrived, the workshop was bustling with activity, children of all ages tinkering with circuits, motors, and wires under the guidance of enthusiastic instructors. Jacob's eyes lit up immediately, while Ethan, though quieter, watched intently as gears clicked into place and tiny machines came to life. As the session progressed, Alex noticed something remarkable. Both boys were thriving. Jacob dove headfirst into building a miniature robot, his hands moving deftly as he followed instructions and solved problems. Ethan, meanwhile, took a more observational approach, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions when prompted. Watching them work side by side, Alex felt a surge of pride and gratitude. These were his sons, intelligent and creative, capable of achieving great things. For the first time in years, Alex allowed himself to dream, not about business ventures or financial milestones, but about the kind of future he could help build for them. After the workshop, they stopped for ice cream at a nearby cafe. Over sundaes piled high with whipped cream and sprinkles, Jacob excitedly recounted every detail of the project he'd worked on. "I think I can make it better," he declared, his voice brimming with determination. Maybe add sensors so it can avoid obstacles. That sounds incredible, Alex replied, genuinely impressed. You'll have to show me your design sometime. Ethan chimed in shyly. Can we come back again? It was fun. The sincerity in his voice caught Alex off guard, filling him with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Of course, he said, smiling. We'll make it a tradition. While Alex was making strides in connecting with the boys, his relationship with Sophia remained complicated. Their interactions were polite, but tinged with tension, a reminder of the unresolved issues between them. Alex couldn't shake the anger he felt over her decision to keep the twins a secret, no matter how much he tried to understand her reasoning. Still, he recognized that rebuilding trust would take time and effort from both sides. One evening, after putting the boys to bed following another successful outing, Alex invited Sophia to join him on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights twinkled below, casting a soft glow over the space. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. I want to thank you, Alex finally said, breaking the quiet, for bringing Jacob and Ethan into my life. I know it couldn't have been easy. Sophia nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. It wasn't, she admitted softly. But I couldn't keep them from you any longer. They deserve to know their father, and you deserve to know them. Her words struck a chord deep within Alex, stirring emotions he wasn't ready to confront. Do you regret leaving? He asked abruptly, his tone sharper than he intended. Regret not telling me? Sophia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I don't regret raising them alone, she said firmly. They're amazing boys, Alex, and I'm proud of everything we've accomplished together. But yes, I regret not trusting you enough to share the truth. I was scared of losing them, of being overshadowed by your success, of failing as a mother, and maybe I was scared of needing you too much. Her honesty disarmed him, forcing him to confront his own fears and insecurities. I wish you had trusted me, he said quietly, but I understand why you didn't. I wasn't exactly easy to rely on back then. Sophia turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. And now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex hesitated, unsure of how to answer. The truth was, he didn't know where they stood, or where he wanted them to stand. His feelings for her were tangled, a mix of lingering affection, frustration, and guilt. Yet despite everything, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. She was part of his past, yes, but she was also an integral part of his present, and possibly his future. Before he could respond, Ethan's voice called out from inside the penthouse. Mom, Dad, can you read us a story? The word Dad sent a jolt through Alex, catching him off guard. He glanced at Sophia, who smiled faintly before heading back inside. Following her lead, Alex joined the boys in the living room, where they had already settled onto the couch with a stack of books. Together they chose a tale about a brave knight embarking on a quest to save a kingdom. As Alex read aloud, his voice steady and animated, he felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling he realized he'd been missing for far too long. That night, as Alex tucked the boys into bed, Ethan hesitantly asked, Do you think Mom will get better? The question caught Alex off guard, forcing him to confront a reality he had avoided until now. While he had focused on bonding with the boys, he hadn't paid much attention to Sophia's health, the reason she had initially revealed, the truth about their existence. Her diagnosis had been vague, mentioned only briefly during their earlier conversations. Now looking at Ethan's worried expression, Alex understood that he needed answers, not just for himself, but for the sake of his children. The next morning, Alex arranged for Sophia to undergo a comprehensive medical evaluation at one of the top hospitals in New York. He accompanied her to the appointment, determined to support her through whatever lay ahead. As they sat together in the waiting room, Alex reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. Whatever happens, we'll face it together, he said, his voice firm yet kind. Sophia looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. When the doctor finally emerged with the results, Alex braced himself for bad news. But instead, the physician delivered a revelation that left them both stunned. Sophia's condition, while serious, was not terminal, as she had led them to believe. With proper treatment and lifestyle changes, she could manage her illness effectively and live a full life. The diagnosis explained her fatigue and occasional bouts of weakness, but did not justify the extent of her earlier claims. As they left the hospital, Alex wrestled with conflicting emotions. Relief washed over him at the knowledge that Sophia wasn't facing a dire prognosis, but it was quickly overshadowed by confusion and betrayal. Why had she exaggerated her condition? What else might she be hiding? That evening, Alex confronted her in the privacy of his penthouse. "Why did you lie about your health?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "Was it to guilt me into stepping up? To manipulate me?" Sophia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, Alex," she sobbed. "It wasn't like that. I was scared. Scared of rejection. Scared of losing the boys. Scared of being overshadowed by your wealth and power. I thought if I told you the truth, you wouldn't care. Or worse, you'd pity me. I couldn't bear either." Her admission cut through Alex like a knife, forcing him to see the depth of her vulnerability and his own blind spots. Despite his anger, he realized that holding on to resentment wouldn't serve anyone, least of all Jacob and Ethan. In that moment, Alex made a choice: to forgive Sophia, not because she deserved it, but because forgiveness was the only way forward, for all of them. As the days passed, Alex threw himself into supporting Sophia's recovery, while continuing to build relationships with the boys. Slowly but surely, the fractures in their family began to mend, piece by fragile piece. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and frustration. But amidst the challenges, there was also hope. A fragile, flickering light that promised brighter days ahead. The revelation about Sophia's health shook Alexander Drake to his core, forcing him to confront not only her deception, but also the deeper complexities of their fractured relationship. For days after the hospital visit, Alex wrestled with conflicting emotions, anger, guilt, and a lingering sense of betrayal. Yet beneath it all, there was something else. An undeniable pull toward Sophia that he couldn't ignore. Despite everything, she remained a part of him, a chapter in his life he had never truly closed. Sophia, too, was grappling with the fallout of her actions. She knew she had overstepped by exaggerating her illness, and the weight of her lies pressed heavily on her conscience. Each time she looked at Alex, she saw the hurt in his eyes, the same eyes that had once gazed at her with love and admiration. Now they were clouded with mistrust, and she understood why. Still, she held on to hope that their shared love for Jacob and Ethan might be enough to rebuild what they had lost, or at least create something new from the ashes of their past. In the weeks that followed, Alex threw himself into supporting Sophia's treatment plan. He arranged for the best specialists, ensured she had access to cutting-edge therapies, and even hired a nutritionist to help her adopt healthier habits. But more than the practical steps, he made a conscious effort to be present for her emotionally. They began spending more time together, not just for the sake of the boys, but as two people navigating the messy aftermath of secrets and regrets. One evening, after a particularly grueling round of physical therapy, Sophia sat on the balcony of Alex's penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. Alex joined her, handing her a cup of tea before taking a seat beside her. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently, breaking the silence. "Is everything okay?" Sophia sighed, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I don't know," she admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I've ruined everything. You're doing so much for me, Alex, but I can't shake the feeling that you're still angry." Alex hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I won't lie. I am angry. What you did wasn't fair, but I'm trying to focus on what matters most. Our family. Jacob and Ethan deserve stability, and I want us to give them that, together." His tone softened as he continued. I won't pretend this is easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, especially after something like this, but I'm willing to try, Sophia, are you? Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she nodded. More than anything, she whispered, I've spent years punishing myself for leaving you, for keeping the boys away. Maybe this is my chance to make things right. Their conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. While the wounds of the past hadn't fully healed, they agreed to move forward cautiously, focusing on building trust one day at a time. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and for now that was enough. As Alex and Sophia worked on repairing their bond, the dynamic between Alex and the boys continued to evolve. Jacob and Ethan were beginning to see their father not just as a distant figure of wealth and power, but as someone who genuinely cared about them. They started opening up more, sharing stories about school, friends, and their dreams for the future. One Saturday afternoon during a trip to the Science Museum, Jacob proudly showed Alex a sketchbook filled with detailed drawings of robots and gadgets he hoped to invent someday. Wow, Alex said, flipping through the pages. These are incredible. Have you thought about how some of these designs could work in real life? Jacob's face lit up. Yeah, I mean, maybe not exactly like this, but close. Do you think I could really build something like that when I grow up? I have no doubt, Alex replied, ruffling his hair affectionately. You've got the brains and the creativity. Just keep dreaming big. Ethan, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally spoke up. What about me? Do you think I could be good at something too? Alex knelt down to his level, meeting his gaze. Of course. Everyone has their own strengths, Ethan. Yours might take a little longer to discover, but when you find it, I promise you'll shine just as brightly as your brother. The sincerity in Alex's voice brought a shy smile to Ethan's face, and for the first time, Alex felt like he was truly getting through to both of them. These moments of connection weren't just about mending the past. They were about creating a foundation for the future, a future where Jacob and Ethan would feel supported, loved, and valued. Despite the strides they were making as a family, challenges inevitably arose. One such challenge came in the form of public scrutiny. The media frenzy surrounding Alex's secret twins showed no signs of dying down. Tabloids published sensational headlines, speculating about the nature of Alex and Sophia's relationship and questioning whether the billionaire would abandon his empire to focus on fatherhood. Some articles painted Sophia as a gold digger, while others portrayed Alex as a neglectful parent who had ignored his responsibilities for years. The constant attention took its toll on everyone, particularly Jacob and Ethan. At school, they became targets of whispers and stares, with classmates teasing them about their famous father. One afternoon, Ethan came home in tears, clutching a crumpled piece of paper with cruel words scrawled across it. Alex's heart broke as he held his son, promising to shield him from further harm. To combat the negativity, Alex decided to take control of the narrative. He called a press conference, inviting journalists from reputable outlets to hear his side of the story. Standing behind a podium, flanked by Sophia and the boys, he addressed the crowd with unwavering resolve. Yes, I made mistakes, he began, his voice steady. For 15 years I lived without knowing my sons existed. That's a failure I will carry with me for the rest of my life. But I'm here now, and I'm committed to being the father they deserve. To anyone who doubts my intentions or questions my priorities, let me be clear. My family comes first. Always. The speech resonated deeply, earning widespread praise for its honesty and vulnerability. Critics softened their stance and public opinion began to shift. More importantly, Jacob and Ethan felt a renewed sense of pride in their father, seeing firsthand how he stood up for them in the face of adversity. With the media storm subsiding, Alex turned his attention back to Sophia. Their relationship had grown stronger in recent weeks, built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to their children. Late one night, as they sat together on the couch watching a movie, Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture so simple yet profoundly intimate. Do you ever think about us? She asked softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the film. Alex paused, considering her question. All the time, he admitted. I think about what we lost, and what we still have. I won't deny that I care about you, Sophia, but I need to know, do you see a future for us? Or is this just about the boys? Sophia lifted her head, meeting his gaze. It's always been about more than the boys, Alex. Even when I left, I loved you. I was scared, yes, but I never stopped loving you. If you're willing to give us another chance, I'd like to try. Her words stirred something deep within Alex, reigniting feelings he had buried long ago. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a life where Sophia wasn't just the mother of his children, but also his partner. It wouldn't be easy. They both carried scars from their past. But perhaps those scars could become the threads that bound them closer together as the weeks turned into months. Alex, Sophia, and the boys settled into a fragile but hopeful rhythm. They weren't a perfect family, and they likely never would be. But perfection wasn't the goal. What mattered was the love they shared, the kind of love that could weather storms, overcome obstacles, and grow stronger with each passing day. For Alexander Drake, a man who had once defined success by numbers on a balance sheet, true fulfillment lay in the laughter of his children, the warmth of a second chance, and the promise of a future built on forgiveness and hope. As the months passed, Alexander Drake's life began to transform in ways he had never anticipated. The billionaire, who once lived by a rigid schedule of meetings, deals, and deadlines, found himself embracing a new rhythm, one dictated not by profit margins but by bedtime stories, soccer practices, and family dinners. It wasn't always smooth sailing. There were moments of frustration, misunderstandings, and lingering doubts. But through it all, Alex discovered something profound. Joy didn't come from achievements or accolades. It came from connection. Jacob and Ethan were thriving under their father's newfound presence. Alex made it a priority to be involved in every aspect of their lives, from helping them with homework to cheering them on at school events. He hired tutors to nurture Jacob's passion for robotics and enrolled Ethan in art classes after noticing his talent for drawing. These small gestures meant the world to the boys, who were beginning to see Alex not just as a distant figure of wealth and power, but as someone deeply invested in their happiness. One evening, during a rare quiet moment at home, Alex sat with Jacob on the floor of the penthouse playroom, piecing together a complex Lego set. The room was filled with half-finished projects, a testament to the countless hours they had spent bonding over shared interests. "You're really good at this," Alex said, watching as Jacob expertly snapped two pieces into place. "Where? Did you learn to build like that?" Jacob grinned proudly. "I watched videos online. Some of them are hard, but I like figuring things out." "That's impressive," Alex replied, genuinely amazed. "You know, when I was your age, I used to take apart old radios and try to put them back together. Most of the time they never worked again, but it taught me a lot about how things function." Jacob's eyes widened with excitement. "Can we do that sometime? Take apart stuff and see what's inside?" Alex chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "Absolutely. We'll make it a project. Maybe even design our own robot." The conversation shifted seamlessly to ideas for inventions, with Jacob sketching rough designs on a notepad while Alex offered suggestions. Watching him scribble furiously, Alex felt a surge of pride, not just in Jacob's creativity but in the realization that he was playing an active role in shaping his son's future. For years, Alex had poured his energy into building businesses, accumulating wealth, and expanding his empire. Now he understood that true legacy wasn't measured in dollars, but in the lives he touched. Meanwhile, Ethan was blossoming in his own way. Encouraged by Alex's support, he began exploring his artistic side, filling sketchbooks with vibrant drawings of fantastical creatures and intricate landscapes. One afternoon, Alex surprised him with a set of professional-grade colored pencils and a large canvas. "I thought you might like to try painting something bigger," he said, placing the gift in front of Ethan. Ethan's face lit up with delight. "Really? Are you sure?" "Of course," Alex replied warmly. "Your art is amazing, and I want you to have the tools to bring your imagination to life." Over the next few days, Ethan worked tirelessly on his masterpiece, a sprawling depiction of a mythical forest teeming with magical beings. When it was finished, Alex hung it prominently in the living room, where everyone could admire it. Seeing his work displayed so proudly brought tears to Ethan's eyes, and he hugged Alex tightly. "Thank you for believing in me," he whispered. These moments of connection weren't limited to Alex and the boys. His relationship with Sophia continued to evolve, growing stronger with each passing week. They spent more time together, sharing meals, long conversations, and quiet evenings on the balcony overlooking the city. While the scars of the past hadn't fully faded, they were learning to navigate their emotions with patience and understanding. One rainy afternoon, as they sipped tea in the cozy warmth of the penthouse kitchen, Sophia broached a sensitive topic. "Alex," she began hesitantly, "have you thought about what this means for us for the long term?" Alex set down his cup, meeting her gaze. "I have," he admitted, "but I don't want to rush anything. We've both been hurt, and I don't want to risk messing things up again." Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand, but I think we owe it to ourselves, and to the boys, to explore what's possible. They need stability, Alex, and so do I." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Stability was something Alex had taken for granted in his own childhood, raised in a privileged yet emotionally distant household. He realized now how much it mattered, not just for Jacob and Ethan, but for Sophia too. She had sacrificed so much to raise the boys alone, and he wanted to ensure she never felt overwhelmed again. "I agree," Alex said softly. "Let's take it slow, but let's keep moving forward. Together." Their decision to rebuild their relationship marked a turning point. Over the following weeks, they began spending more time as a family unit, going on weekend trips, hosting game nights, and creating traditions that would anchor them through the ups and downs of life. Slowly but surely, the fractures in their bond began to heal, replaced by a fragile but enduring sense of unity. However, challenges still loomed on the horizon. The public scrutiny surrounding Alex's secret twins refused to die down entirely. While the initial media frenzy had subsided, occasional articles and gossip columns continued to speculate about the state of his personal life. Some critics accused him of using his newfound family as a PR stunt, while others questioned whether he was truly capable of balancing fatherhood with his demanding career. The pressure mounted when a rival tech company launched a smear campaign, attempting to undermine Alex's reputation by dredging up old rumors about his past relationships. The attacks hit close to home, forcing Alex to confront uncomfortable truths about the sacrifices he had made in pursuit of success. Late one night, after a particularly grueling day of damage control, Alex confided in Sophia. "I hate this," he said, pacing the length of the study. "All these lies, all this manipulation, it's exhausting. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this life anymore." Sophia placed a calming hand on his arm. "You are cut out for it, Alex. You've proven that time and again. But maybe it's okay to step back a little, to focus less on proving yourself to the world and more on being present for the people who matter most." Her words resonated deeply, sparking a realization that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. Alex's identity had long been tied to his status as a billionaire and business magnate. But now, surrounded by the love and laughter of his family, he saw that there was more to life than wealth and power. True fulfillment lay in the connections he nurtured and the legacy he built, not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the hearts of those he loved, determined to strike a better balance. Alex announced a bold move. He would step down as CEO of Drake Technologies, transitioning into a more advisory role. The decision sent shockwaves through the business world, with analysts speculating about his motivations. But Alex remained steadfast, explaining his choice in a heartfelt statement. "For years I defined success by numbers, profits, revenues, market shares," he wrote. "But recently I've come to realize that the most important investments aren't financial, they're emotional. My family is my greatest asset, and I intend to prioritize them above all else. This isn't goodbye. It's a new chapter. The Announcement drew mixed reactions, but within his inner circle, Alex's decision was met with overwhelming support. Clara, his loyal assistant, summed it up best. "It's about time you stopped chasing shadows and started living in the light." With his professional responsibilities scaled back, Alex dedicated himself fully to his role as a father and partner. He organized regular family outings, planned surprise adventures, and even took cooking lessons so he could prepare meals for everyone. Each gesture, no matter how small, reinforced the bonds they were building together. One crisp autumn morning, Alex woke early to find Jacob and Ethan already up, eagerly waiting by the window. "Are we really going today?" Jacob asked, bouncing on his toes. "Yes, we are," Alex confirmed with a smile. Today was the day they had been looking forward to for weeks, a trip to a nearby national park for hiking and stargazing. As they piled into the car, laughter filling the air, Alex felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what mattered, the simple joys of being together, creating memories that would last a lifetime. By the time they returned home late that evening, exhausted but happy, Alex knew he had made the right choice. His journey wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time in years he felt grounded. He had found purpose not in the pursuit of wealth but in the love of his family. And as he tucked Jacob and Ethan into bed, listening to their sleepy voices recount the highlights of the day, Alex realized something extraordinary. He wasn't just rebuilding his life, he was redefining it. The months turned into a year, and Alexander Drake's life bore little resemblance to the one he had led before Sophia and the boys re-entered it. The billionaire who once thrived on high-stakes deals and relentless ambition now found fulfillment in quieter, more meaningful moments, helping Jacob debug a malfunctioning robot, cheering Ethan on during his first art exhibition at school, or simply sharing a quiet evening with Sophia as they watched the city lights flicker below. It was a transformation that surprised even him, a man who had spent decades defining success by numbers and achievements. But now, surrounded by the laughter and love of his family, Alex understood that true wealth lay not in what you owned, but in whom you cherished. Their journey hadn't been without its challenges. There were days when old wounds resurfaced, testing the fragile trust they had worked so hard to rebuild. One particularly tense evening after a long day of dealing with lingering media scrutiny, Alex snapped at Sophia during dinner. "Do you ever think about how this affects me?" he asked sharply, his frustration boiling over. "Every decision I make is scrutinized, dissected, judged." Sophia froze, hurt flashing across her face. "Of course I do," she replied softly. "But don't forget, Alex, I've been living under a microscope too, for years. Alone." Her words cut through his anger like a knife, forcing him to see things from her perspective. He realized then that while their struggles were different, they were equally valid. Apologizing later that night, Alex vowed to be more mindful of her feelings and his own reactions. These moments of vulnerability weren't setbacks, they were opportunities to grow stronger together. Despite the occasional missteps, their relationship continued to deepen. Alex and Sophia began attending couples counseling, determined to address unresolved issues and strengthen their bond. Through these sessions, they learned to communicate openly, forgive past mistakes, and envision a future where they stood side by side, not just as co-parents, but as partners. It wasn't easy, but the effort paid off. Slowly, the walls between them crumbled, replaced by a foundation of mutual respect and affection. For Jacob and Ethan, the changes were equally profound. They no longer felt like outsiders looking in on their father's glamorous world. Instead, they were active participants in it, invited to share in his adventures and triumphs. Alex made it a point to include them in decisions, big and small, teaching them the value of responsibility and teamwork. When Jacob expressed interest in coding, Alex enrolled him in advanced programming classes. When Ethan revealed a passion for storytelling through art, Alex encouraged him to write captions for his drawings, weaving narratives into his creations. One Saturday morning, as they gathered around the dining table for breakfast, Alex presented each boy with a special gift. For Jacob, it was a sleek laptop loaded with software for robotics design. For Ethan, it was a leather-bound sketchbook embossed with his initials. "These are tools to help you chase your dreams," Alex explained, his voice filled with pride. "Never stop exploring, never stop creating." The boys beamed with excitement, hugging their father tightly. In that moment, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the second chance he'd been given, for the love that surrounded him, and for the opportunity to guide his sons toward bright futures. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics within their household. Alex and Sophia decided to move into a larger home, a warm, welcoming space where they could all live together as a family. The penthouse, though luxurious, felt impersonal compared to the cozy suburban house they chose. With its sprawling backyard, treehouse and kitchen designed for baking experiments, the new home became a sanctuary for laughter, creativity, and togetherness. On weekends, the family often hosted gatherings, inviting friends, neighbors, and extended family members to join them. These events allowed Jacob and Ethan to form connections beyond their immediate circle, helping them feel rooted in a community. One memorable summer afternoon, they organized a neighborhood barbecue, complete with games, music, and homemade lemonade. As Alex manned the grill alongside Sophia, watching the boys race around the yard with their friends, he felt a sense of belonging he hadn't known he was missing. But perhaps the most significant milestone came on a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 year after Sophia and the boys had walked back into Alex's life. To mark the occasion, Alex planned a surprise celebration, a private dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the glittering city skyline. He invited Sophia, Jacob, and Ethan, along with a few close friends who had supported them throughout their journey. As they sat together, bathed in the golden glow of candlelight, Alex raised his glass for a toast. "A year ago, my life was incomplete," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I thought I had everything: success, wealth, power, but I didn't have what mattered most: family. Tonight, I want to thank all of you for showing me what real happiness looks like. You've taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, staying committed, and growing together." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she reached across the table to squeeze his hand. Jacob and Ethan exchanged knowing smiles, their young faces glowing with pride. It was a moment none of them would forget, a testament to how far they had come and how much they had overcome. In the weeks that followed, Alex reflected on the lessons he had learned. He realized that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but an ongoing process, one that required patience, empathy, and humility. He also understood that rebuilding trust took time, but it was worth every effort. Most importantly, he recognized that success wasn't measured by external achievements but by the quality of relationships and the impact one had on others' lives. For Sophia, the past year had been transformative as well. She no longer carried the weight of guilt and fear that had once defined her existence. With Alex's unwavering support, she embraced her role not just as a mother, but as a partner in building a brighter future. Together, they created a home filled with warmth, laughter, and unconditional love, a stark contrast to the loneliness she had endured for so many years. Jacob and Ethan flourished in this nurturing environment, blossoming into confident, compassionate individuals. Their bond with Alex grew stronger with each passing day, built on shared experiences, open communication, and mutual respect. Whether it was tackling science projects, painting murals, or simply spending lazy Sundays watching movies, they reveled in the joy of being part of a loving family. As winter approached, bringing with it the promise of holidays and celebrations, Alex found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought them here. From the shock of Sophia's arrival on his 40th birthday to the newfound harmony they now shared, every twist and turn had shaped him into the person and father he was meant to be. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but he faced them with optimism, armed with the knowledge that he wasn't alone. On Christmas Eve, as snowflakes drifted lazily outside their window, the family gathered around the fireplace, exchanging gifts and sharing stories. Jacob proudly showed off a new invention he had been working on, a mini drone capable of delivering snacks across the room. Ethan unveiled a beautifully illustrated comic book featuring characters inspired by their family, and Alex, holding Sophia's hand, marveled at the life they had built together. "Thank you," he whispered to her later that night, as they stood on the balcony watching the snow-covered city glisten beneath the moonlight, "for giving me another chance, for trusting me enough to let me be part of this." Sophia smiled, leaning into him. "We're a team, Alex. Always." In that moment, surrounded by the people he loved most, Alexander Drake finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. It wasn't about the empire he had built or the accolades he had earned. It was about the connections he had nurtured, the hearts he had touched, and the legacy of love he was creating. One day, one memory, one laugh at a time.